Hey everybody, welcome back to Mastering Avantra. My name is Brenton O'Callaghan, and today I'm going to be taking you through the installation of an Avantra master server on Linux. So why don't we go ahead and get started? So I'm going to switch over to my screen share. So the first thing I always like to point out here is our documentation website, which is at docs.avantra.com. Here you can find all the latest information about Avantra, and there's a couple of things I would point out. The first one is supported platforms, where you can have a look and see what operating systems are supported for the server. So for example, we support Microsoft Windows Server 2012 or 2 and above, 64-bit, and then Linux on x86 64-bit as well. From a database standpoint, you have two choices. You have Microsoft SQL Server 2012 and above, and you have PostgreSQL 9.6.x, 10.x, and 11.x, all on Linux x64. You also have your hardware requirements listed here. So for a standard installation, we would recommend a minimum of a dual core processor, 2 gigahertz. You probably would want to go a bit above that, and at least 8 gigs of physical RAM and 50 gigs of storage space. Again, you might want to increase that as you grow. And then for a larger installation, if you're doing lots of managed systems, you know what, beef that up, get a quad core, 3 gigahertz or more, 16 gig of RAM, the more the better if you've got a really large landscape. So you'll find all that information here, as well as step-by-step installation instructions for your Avantra server, covering Microsoft Windows operating system and the Unix-like operating systems. In here, you'll also find information about, for example, the Java runtime environment. So as Avantra is a Java application, it requires a 64-bit runtime environment. We support Java runtime 8 or 11. Personally, I go for Java 8, and that's what I'm going to use here. Purely because LTS for Java 8 is actually longer than Java 11 right now, or the last time I checked. The installation I'm going to do today is based on a Google Cloud Platform virtual machine. So you can see I have it here, gdev cdma1. I've gone for quite a small machine because I'm not actually putting any systems on this, so you're going to want to go for something larger. But for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm using quite a small machine. And you'll see here, it's a very standard installation. It has a network address. It has a boot disk, which is just a 10 gig one storing the operating system. And then I have an additional disk of about 20 gigs. Again, I've gone smaller than you should. Make sure you have enough space there. Make it 50 or 100 gigs. And that's where I'm going to store my Avantra data. Very predictable stuff. Nice and easy to follow. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to log into this machine, and let's go ahead and actually prepare it for the installation of Avantra. So let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to pop over here to this machine. So a gdev cdma1, so this is the machine I'm on. The first thing I'm going to do is to configure a service user to run Avantra for me. I never run Avantra as myself for obvious reasons. So I'm going to use the standard commands to do this. One of the things I didn't mention is what version of Ubuntu, or what version I'm running. So I think it says it here. If not, I can just pull it up here. Uname -a. So this is an Ubuntu 20.04 LTS installation. So I'm running this on GCP, so it's their provided image. So this is the LTS version of Ubuntu. So all the commands you'll see here are specific to Ubuntu. If you're using Red Hat, if you're using CentOS, if you're using SLES, you're going to have a different set of commands that you're going to want to use specific to that distribution. So tweak this to match what you need. So I'm going to start off by creating the service user. So it's user add is the name of the command. And I'm going to call my service user Avantra. And I'm going to get it to use the shell bin bash. The bin bash is just a personal preference. I always set my service users to use bash as the shell. You can set it to whatever you want. You'll also notice here I never specified the -p for a password, and I didn't create a home directory either using the -m flag. I'm seriously just using this as a service user. And the only time I'll ever be logging on as this user is doing something like sudo su Avantra to log on within the local machine, just like that. So just to show you, that's the service user. It's created, it's ready to go. Next, we're going to want to install PostgreSQL. Now, the flavor of PostgreSQL I'm going for is PostgreSQL 11. Try saying Postgres several times fast. It's quite a lot of fun. So the first thing I want to show you here is more information about PostgreSQL installations. So by default, and I'll be using apt-get, apt-get does not actually include PostgreSQL by standard as one of the package sources. So the first thing we're going to have to do is add it. Now, the reason I brought up this wiki is because here you can see all the information about, and this is directly from PostgreSQL.org. You can see information about what is supported. So for example, we're going to be going for a Debian because Ubuntu is based on Debian. We're going to be going for Debian 2004, which is focal, architecture x64, PostgreSQL 11, etc., etc., etc. The reason I'm showing you this is there's lots of instructions down here about how to add PostgreSQL installation sources to your server. I would encourage you to have a conversation with your administrators and use the source that they would recommend, because they may have an in-house source or they may have a specific package server you should install from. But for me, I'm using the publicly available installation sources. So I'm going to add PostgreSQL.org to my package manager and say, hey, I want to be able to install stuff from here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. So the first command I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new file here, and I'm just pasting in the command. In fact, let me just clear what's on my screen so this is easier to see. So here I'm saying sudo, because it's in a protected directory. Nano is a text editor, and etc apt sources.list.d. So this folder is where we add extra sources for our package manager, and I'm adding a list for PostgreSQL. In this file, and again, there's great examples on that wiki I just showed you, I'm going to add this line here, which is the Debian dependency for apt.postgresql.org on the public repos, and the repo is apt. For the installation type focal, again, remember 20.0.4, the LTS is focal, and it's the main branch is what I'm looking at here. So once I add this in, I need to do one more thing before I can actually do an installation from there. And that is all packages that come through this package manager are signed. And so to be able to verify that what we're installing is legitimate, correct, secure, we have to install the public key for PostgreSQL.org. And we do this from this directory. Again, it's all covered in that wiki. Honestly, I'm not going to go through it here, but you can go through it yourself. And if I do an ls, you can see the file has been downloaded and it looks something like this. So this is a standard public key. We now add this public key to our package repository, our package manager, and we're going to add it like this, and it will say okay if everything's been received. Now we tell our package manager to go and update itself from its sources, and you'll see here if I scroll back up, it's actually here. It has logged into or logged on to the PostgreSQL.org public repositories, and it's downloaded all the packages that are available there for me to install, 188 kilobytes. And that's it, it's done. So we have updated our package manager to be able to install PostgreSQL. Now we actually get to the fun stuff. So we go sudo apt get install -y because I don't need to be prompted. I know what I'm doing. PostgreSQL 11. Boom, that's it. So now what it's doing is it's downloading the latest version of PostgreSQL 11 and it's installing it on this machine. Now, a PostgreSQL installation comes with a standard service user, helpfully named Postgres. So the next thing I'm going to do is once the installation is complete, I'm going to log on and I'm going to create a user for Avantra to log on to the database as. I'm also going to create a database in the server for Avantra to use for all of its data. So I'm going to do sudo su postgre. So now I'm logged on to the same server as Postgrade. Now I can use PSQL, which is the standard command line program for logging onto a PostgreSQL server. And now I'm going to execute a few commands. So the first command, I'm just going to paste it here and I'll describe it to you, which is create role. If you're not familiar with PostgreSQL, that means create user. Avantra_db, create the database, and set their logon password to this long random string over here. So I'm creating a user that we're going to use later on for Avantra to connect to the underlying database. The second thing I'm going to do is create a database. It's as a container database within the server for Avantra to store its data. So create database, Avantra_db, owner, Avantra_db. Very simple, very obvious what I'm doing here. Once I've this done, I'm done in here. So I do /q and I do exit to go back to my own user. So now our PostgreSQL database is installed and set up. We've created a user for Avantra to connect with, and we've created a database for Avantra to use. There's one more step we need to do, and this is adjusting who is allowed to log on to the database, because by default, it's actually not set up in a way that we can use. So again, I'm going to use Nano, which is my favorite text editor. It's in PostgreSQL. It's in version 11. If you choose to use a different version, of course, that would be different. And there are some standard files in here, but the one I'm interested in, which is in every single PostgreSQL database installation, is pg_hba.conf. What is this file? It is the Postgrade client authentication configuration file. So what is defined in here? Very simply, I'm going to go down the bottom here now. In here, you define the type of connection that is allowed, the database they're allowed to connect to, the user that is allowed to do this, where they're allowed to connect from, so what address, and what way are they allowed to connect. Now, you always leave this top one on here, which is local, all, Postgres, and peer, because, hey, you need to be able to log on to your own database from your own server. I generally comment out the rest of these, but please have a chat with your administrator and make sure this isn't in use for anything else, because you don't want to screw up anything else in terms of its access. So I'm going to say allow host-based logon, which is from the network. Let them access all the databases. The user is Avantra DB. I'm going to let them log on from the same network. So you can use this kind of alias here, same net. And then finally, I'm going to do MD5, which is password-based logon. So as long as you allow all those, you're in good shape. We save this. And then finally, we do a service, Postgre restart. So we're restarting the PostgreSQL service. If we made an error in hba.conf, it'll tell us here. But there's no error, so we're actually good to go. Okay, that was step one, getting your PostgreSQL database up and running. Step 2 is your Java runtime environment. So I mentioned that we support Java 8 and Java 11. So I'm going to go for Java 8. So very simple, no faffing around on this one. apt-get install, oh, apparently I can't type today. Install -y, Java, Open JDK, because I like using the Open JDK one, 8 JRE headless. And that should be the right one. Yes, it is. Okay, great. So now I'm installing a Java runtime environment. And once this is finished installing, I should be able to run the Java -version command, and we should be able to see a compatible Java ready for us to install Avantra. So our Java is now installed. So we can do Java, let's click here, Java -version. And we see that OpenJDK version 1.8 is installed and ready to go. Okay, now we're into the fun part. So we've got our PostgreSQL server installed. Now we need to so we've got PostgreSQL server installed and Java's installed. Now it's time to install Avantra. So the first thing we do is we go to downloads.avantra.com. Now the first thing you'll be presented with is this logon page for the Avantra support website. If you don't have a logon for this, please drop us an email at support@avantra.com. We'll be more than happy to set it up for you. So I'm just going to log straight in, and it brings me to our standard download page. So you get your release notes and all the latest information about Avantra. We're going to go straight to the components download, and we're interested in the Avantra server. Here I'm going to install the latest version of 20.11.1, which is what's available today. And I get two options. I get the Linux option and the Windows option. So I'm going to go for Linux, and I'm going to use the direct link button. Now this is useful if you're installing it within a network. You don't necessarily want to download it to your laptop and re-upload it. You can just get a curl command, like what I'm going to use here, copy it, bring it over here, and I'm going to say sudo su, actually no, hold on a second. Let me show you here. So if I go to cd/opt/Avantra, this is where I'm going to be installing my Avantra installer. Now, what I'm about to do here is to fix this. So at the moment, this folder is owned by root. So I'm going to make it now owned by the service user we created earlier. So I'm saying chown Avantra. Oops, I forgot my sudo. So sudo chown Avantra opt Avantra. Like that. And now if we do an ls-la, you can see that this folder is now available to us. Now let's log in as Avantra. And now I'm ready to go. I'm in a folder I can write to, logged in as Avantra. I'm going to download the Avantra installer. So what I'll do is I'll go back and get this curl command and paste it in here. So what's happening now is it's reaching out to our servers and downloading the latest Avantra installer. After that, so now that much is done, it's not a large installer. You can see it's available here and it's a bin file, so it's executable. We just need to add execution for the owner. So chmod o plus x Avantra ls-la. And you can see here that the Avantra server is, oh, sorry, I said, oh, my apologies. I'm just going to go for u plus x, like this, and we'll install the Avantra server. Okay, so now we're running the Avantra installer. The first thing it's going to do is to check to make sure that we have a compatible Java. And the great news is it says found compatible Java 8 at user bin Java because we installed it system-wide. Next, it's going to ask me what port do I want to install on. Now, it's worth noting here that this would prompt me for port 80 only if I'm running the installer as root. In this case, I'm not, and I'm very happy for it to run on non-standard ports. Linux requires that anybody who's using the protected ports of 80 or 443 be a privileged user, which I'm not in this case, and I'm absolutely fine with that. So I set the HTTP port to 8080. I've entered a HTTPS port of 8443, and I want to redirect anybody who goes to the HTTP port to the HTTPS port. And that's it. The installation's complete. Literally, it's that easy. So now it has told me, okay, your Avantra UI secure URL is available. I'm going to access this via IP address. The one thing I will mention here is that by default, the secure URI or the URL via HTTPS uses an inbuilt certificate. So naturally, when you navigate to it, which we're going to do in a moment, it will tell us that it's an insecure place to navigate to. You're going to want to replace this with your own internal certificate, either provided by your own certificate authority or by one of the public ones. So there is a video to take you through this. If you look at Mastering Avantra, which is a playlist we have on YouTube covering loads of information about how to use Avantra and how to configure it. Mastering Avantra video number 27 is about how to add your own certificate authority certificates to your Avantra installation. And I highly recommend you watch it and do that configuration yourself. So now I'm going to go to HTTPS, like this, to the IP address, and I'm going to go 8443. We give it a couple of seconds, and boom. So the first thing is that Chrome tells me it's not secure. Why is this? If I bring up the certificate, it's a self-signed root certificate called Xandria. Please replace this. Mastering Avantra video number 27. But now we're in the wizard final area of the setup, which is set up your Avantra database. I've got two options, Microsoft SQL Server and PostgreSQL. That's what I'm using, so I'm going to say next. You have the option of using a centralized database. Let's say you're running a high available scenario. In this case, I'm running it all on the same machine, so my host and port are just localhost, and if you're using the standard port, you don't need to provide this. My user is Avantra DB, and the password is the one I specified earlier, which I thankfully noted down, and I hit next. So now that's allowed the wizard here to successfully connect to our PostgreSQL installation we completed a few minutes ago. I'm going to select, maybe it hasn't, Avantra TB. Next. Interesting. Avantra DB, which is the name of the database. Let's see if it can connect. Okay, password authentication failed for user Avantra DB. Okay, something's not quite right. Let's have a quick look. So we're going to go back to this command that we ran earlier to look at the hba.conf, because I suspect we have a problem in here. Let's go down. So we're saying host-based authentication for all, for Avantra DB, same net, and MD5. That looks correct to me, but let's spread these out a little bit just in case there's a problem. Okay, and I'm going to restart the PostgreSQL service one more time. Like this. Now let's have a look. Try again. Avantra DB. No. I forgot one of the characters in the password. I suspect that's the problem. there it is. Okay, that was nice and easy. So what happened there was I fat fingered the password, I hit next, and now I'm getting all greens and it's very happy. So just do your own basic error check in there when these kind of things crop up, which they eventually do. I knew it was either going to be the password or it was going to be whether I had given this user the ability to connect to this database from out here from the same network. I had, so in this case, it was the password. Okay, so this has gone green. So JDBC, PostgreSQL, localhost, Avantra DB. And then I'm going to create and verify the schema because this is a brand new installation. I hit this button, and what it's doing now is it's setting up the tables, it's setting up all the information within the Avantra database, including information about itself, its host name, and all that kind of fun stuff. Once that's done, I hit next, and I'm asked to provide a password, username and password. Now note these down carefully. These are the keys to the kingdom. It's your root user for your Avantra installation. This is typically used at setup, exactly as we're doing at the moment, but also during upgrades. When you're upgrading your Avantra installation, this is the user that should log on the first time after an upgrade to do any changes to the database that need to be done. So this is the keys to the kingdom, your secure user, and you hit save and sign in. So what it does now is it does all the final setting up of the database, the final configuration of your user, and in a couple of seconds, you'll end up just as you are here, and we'll do a log on, like this, and boom. No, I don't want to save this password. And that's it. You're in your Avantra installation. This master status unknown will disappear after a few minutes once everything gets up and running. But your next steps now would be to install your license, which is under administration and licenses. You get your license from us at support@avantra.com. You'll start to configure your first servers. You'll start to add your SAP systems. And again, Mastering Avantra videos number 28 and 29 are what should you do now that you've installed Avantra. And I highly recommend you check that out on our YouTube channel. But that's it. In just a few minutes, we've gone from having a blank virtual machine running Ubuntu 20.04 LTS. We've installed a PostgreSQL server using the package manager. We installed a Java runtime environment using the package manager. And then we downloaded and installed Avantra 20.11.1 and went through the wizard of getting it up and running first time. Next steps, watch those videos on the next steps around installing your servers and your SAP systems. Get this certificate replaced so that you're using an internal certificate authority, Mastering Avantra video number 27, and just start to enjoy and play around with your Avantra system. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video of how to get started installing and getting up and running with your Avantra 20.11.1 installation on Linux. Thanks very much for watching. See you next time.